Babylon is a film by Damien Chazelle. It is an epic 3-hour film about old Hollywood taking place in the 20s during the silent film era. This one is mainly focused on an ensemble cast. Jack Conrad, he is a kind of like a Douglas Fairbanks, swarthy sort of Lothario actor played by Brad Pitt. We also got Nellie Leroy. She is an ingenue trying to get into the film business. We got Manuel. He is a Mexican fixer that works kind of behind the scenes at parties and things like that. And a little bit from Sidney Palmer. He's a black jazz musician who basically just sort of works on orchestra. So he gets kind of shafted. That's kind of like one of the film's biggest weaknesses, is that the movie is overplotted, has too much going on, but at the same time doesn't have a lot going on either, because there's not much of a point. You know, the movie is very lavish in its production design. The opening sequence literally is like a 10-minute party scene full of like sex and elephants and parties and stuff. And we're sort of giving you the concept of the big party scene. This is like the 20s. This is like a Gatsby party. And then we're focusing on Manny and Nellie. They basically both get their big break and they start working in Hollywood. Meanwhile, Jack basically is there behind the scenes too, but when the film has a big shift about halfway through, when movies start transitioning from silent era to the talkies with the jazz singer and other things like that. So it starts to push people around a little bit. There's a lot of shifting environments. So all of a sudden Manny's promoted, so is Sidney. And then the other two sort of start falling from grace. So that's kind of like the second half, you know. So the movie has a lot going on, but it's very unfocused and scattered. Sidney's story is pretty good, but he's barely in the movie. He has like one really emotional scene, and he just sort of disappears from the film. And then they throw in some other subplots and stuff like Nellie's gambling problem. Really great montages. There's a lot of like separate scenes that are really great, like the first ever attempt at a studio trying to do talkies. Really great scene. The party scene's pretty great. There's also a good montage of like Nellie's rise to stardom. Jack Conrad has a couple of scenes. Brad Pitt doesn't really steal the show or anything. He's just sort of there. But he has a great scene with the gossip rag lady, which is really good. Manny is pretty good too. He's like there's a great scene where he's trying to get a camera. So the movie has some great parts, but it doesn't have a lot of a sum. And Damien Chazelle, you know, this isn't his first rodeo. You know, he's written a couple films. He's directed about 2, I think. Whiplash and La La Land. So he still does the crappy cinematography. Whenever he's got like a really emotional scene or a really like hyper action sequence, he shakes the camera like an amateur. I don't know what's going on. He's in charge of the movie. He does it in La La Land in the oven scene. He does it again in this movie. There's also like this really creepy scene involving Tobey Maguire where they go into this sort of weird sort of dungeon of sorts, and that whole sequence is just not filmed very well. He still has a lot to learn as director. I didn't like the shaky cam. The movie doesn't need any of that. You know, we're not watching an action movie. We're watching lavish 20s to 30s, you know, period piece drama about Hollywood. You shouldn't have shaky cam just whenever things are like, you know, emotional. It really seems really amateurish still. It's just something that he's trying to like keep in his movie, but I didn't like it in La La Land. I didn't like it in this film either. So Babylon has a lot going on, has the production value, star-studded cast, a lot of people. I didn't even recognize half the people in this movie. Apparently Olivia Wilde is one of Jack's wives. I didn't even notice, but the movie just has a lot going on and not a lot to show for it. So I give Babylon a 5 out of 10.